Okay, I meant to actually come back in the same video, but apparently pause and turning it off, I did one and I meant to do the other. Anyway, I had left you with this table of values if you needed it, and the instructions to graph cosine. So cosine is the graph that's this nice wave, starts at a high point, then goes down to a middle value of 0, low, middle, high. Okay, so what I want to do now is graph a related function, but it's going to be y equals cosine of x plus pi over 4. So similar to our last example, I'm changing things by adding a number. But this time I'm adding it to x before I plug into cosine. Last time I plugged into sine and then I added. Now that was a vertical shift because sine gave us our original y values and then we added 2 to the y values. Here I'm changing the x value, I'm changing the input before I evaluate cosine. So I'm suspicious that this might give me something like a horizontal change rather than a vertical one. Okay. So I'm going to create a table of values to help me out. Okay. Table of values is a really useful tool. We're going to eventually build to the point where it's an optional tool, where we'll have some shortcuts that we can take. But in figuring out why things work the way they do, I think a table of values makes a lot of sense. This table is going to have 3 columns. The tricky thing to realize is that if I want cosine to be easy to evaluate, then I want the thing I'm plugging into cosine to be nice. I want that thing to be my quadrantal angles. So 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. That way, when I go to evaluate cosine, I just get my usual 1, 0, -1, 0, 1. I get those nice values, the high, middle, and low values. The work I'm going to have to do, though, I'm going to figure out what x is, because this is not the x plus pi over 4 axis. So when I'm graphing, I'm going to be graphing x and cosine of x plus pi over 4. Okay. So I'm going to need to work backwards to figure out what my x values are that I associate with those y values. To do that, I'm just going to realize that that gives me an equation. It's telling me that x plus pi over 4 is equal to 0. If I want to solve for x, I would subtract over the pi over 4. So I'm going to get x is negative pi over 4. So that's the x value that I'm going to have that goes with this y value of 1. Same thing for the next point. If x plus pi over 4 is equal to pi over 2, now here I might want to multiply that by 1 in the form of 2 halves to get a common denominator of 4, but then I can subtract over the pi over 4, and so I'm going to get x is equal to pi over 4. So I'm going to have you pause the video again. Hopefully I'll come back in the same video. If not, I'll pick up in a new one. Okay. I want you to complete this table of values and then graph this function. So you'll be plotting these points and graphing this function. Okay? See you in a minute.